Right. 1 Corinthians 9:27. But I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be cast away. Listen, here Paul is saying that he is still vulnerable to the fate of being cast away. Also, note that Paul says that his very salvation is contingent on bringing his body into subjection, which means that his very actions can cause him to be cast away. Go and read it yourself. I keep my body and under my body and what? Bring it into subjection. He brings his body into subjection. Why? Because lest that by any means he should be cast away. Okay.
It's very important to note the context of 1 Corinthians 9. And so let's start looking here in verse 24, where he starts the analogy of running a race. And verse 24 through the end of the chapter is talking about this analogy of running a race to receive a prize. And so Paul says, know ye not that they which run in a race run all, but one receiveth the prize? So run that ye may obtain. And every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible. I therefore so run, not as uncertainly, so fight I, not as one that beateth the air. But I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway. So the number one question that should be going through your head is, where in this passage does it talk about salvation? Where in this passage does it say that Paul is fearing that he would be cast away or rejected from being saved? Because the passage is actually giving an analogy of someone running in a race. A race indicates effort. Salvation does not require effort. It's not something that we work for. It's simply a gift that we received. And I'll cover that in the next verse that Young Don uses. But here, there's nothing in 1 Corinthians 9 that indicates that Paul is talking about his salvation. But rather, if we take the analogy of the race, Paul is actually saying that he fears that he should be rejected, cast away, disqualified from the race in the analogy that he's using. And in this verse, he says that he brings his body in subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway or should be rejected. What Paul is actually saying is that he fears that if he does not keep his body under subjection, that he could actually be rejected from preaching the gospel to other people. Because if you just live your life however you want, you will not be effective in preaching the gospel to other people. Though you may be saved, if you go around and you're just drinking all the time, or you're just doing any sin that you feel like doing, you're not going to be able to effectively witness to your coworkers. You're not going to be able to effectively give the gospel to your boss or to someone that knows you, a close family member. And so you should keep your body under subjection so that you are not rejected from preaching the gospel unto others. Or in the analogy that Paul gives, so that you're not rejected from the race. Nothing in this passage indicates salvation, but rather Paul is saying that he wants to be as effective as he can in his ministry. And part of that is abstaining from sin to make sure that others will take him seriously when he preaches to them and they don't reject him. Paul is stating that he wants to make sure that he can be an effective witness and he's not rejected by others from preaching the gospel unto them.